Today I'm joined by Darren Burrows from Taurus Property. Darren is somebody I've got to know really well over the last few years, and we're going to talk about a subject that many people forget about in property, which is all things CDM regulations and health and safety around keeping your project safe if you're doing developments. This is something many people forget about and can get caught out on. So Darren, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So CDM regulations, what does that even mean? What does it stand for?
So CDM is the Construction, Design and Management Regulations, and it's all the stuff that basically is health and safety and just running construction projects in the right way.
Okay, and how did you get into this and how long have you been doing it?
So my background is I've run companies that have been working within the construction industry.
Yeah.
So we've been subcontracted for a lot of big house builders, and part of my role was managing the projects, getting involved with all the contracts, the risk assessments, method statements, all that kind of stuff. So my background was in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously getting into property, I've kind of transferred those skills across, and I'm just very passionate about trying to make sure that everybody understands it, just to protect themselves, really.
So back in 2017, 18, you started to decide to do property for yourself?
Yep, 2018, yeah.
And then the job you had as a corporate job, I talk a lot about transferable skills with people where they've got this role they do in life.
Yep.
So you were working for other companies in these roles, decided 2018 to get into property, started doing some property, and then realized, hang on a second, I got a transferable skill. There's a big gap in the industry. There's people here that are doing projects, they're not safe.
Yep.
I'm going to show people and help people on their projects to deliver them safely.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, is that where you just do you come involved in people's projects where you'll take a role and like joint venturing with them, or just a consultancy type role, or a bit of each? How does it work?
Yeah, a bit of a mixture, really. Just depends on the project, the client. Some people will want want direction on how to do it, in which case I kind of work as a consultant with them, give them direction on what they need to be doing. Other people either don't have the time or the knowledge or the inclination to do it, in which case I'll step in and I'll run it for them.
Right. A lot of people that I meet, and certainly how I used to think was, oh well, I'm only doing a refurb. I've got a builder in and he's changing a few slates on the roof, or he's maybe replacing the roof, but it's only a terraced house, or he's painting and decorating, or so on. Plastering, made minor stuff, but terraced house type stuff. Yep. And CDM regulations, that's for the big commercial conversions. So when does CDM regulations become relevant for people, and when should they really be thinking about it? Okay,
so CDM regs are in place regardless of what the project is, so anything to do with construction. Now, the variation comes if you're doing if it's a domestic project, so if you're just getting a builder in to do an extension on your house, the Health and Safety Executive, HSE, would deem it that you're a non-professional, so you don't understand the process, so the responsibility falls on the contractor to take care of all the CDM.
Yeah.
Now,
that's if I'm doing it. That's if I own a house as a family home.
As a residential house.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you're a property investor and you're doing, whether it's a buy-to-let or an HMO, that becomes a commercial construction site in the eyes of the Health and Safety Executive.
Yeah.
And that means that you, as the client, the person who owns that property, is the person who you have a duty of care. You become a duty holder.
Yeah.
Now, there's a CDM hierarchy. So if the project has more than one contractor involved in it, you need to be appointing. The client needs to be appointing a principal designer and a principal contractor.
So is that like if you had a plumber and an electrician?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you had multiple trades, then one of those should be taking on the role of principal contractor, effectively.
Yeah.
Now, this stuff, a lot of people get scared when you start talking about health and safety and CDM processes and all that kind of stuff. Everyone thinks it's going to be really costly and really difficult, but it's like a lot of things. It's just a process checkbox to make sure that you're just going through the right processes.
That's just understanding of it, rather than when most people when I think immediately about the government bringing in laws around no-fault evictions, and people are panicking, but they never read the detail.
Yeah.
So it's very similar with CDM?
It's just a lack of understanding, yeah. As I say, people get scared by it because they think it's a big thing, but when you actually break it down, the processes and the steps are not that
Onerous.
Onerous. But obviously, it gets, as the project gets bigger and more complicated, and the more
Then it
people
gets
involved,
bigger.
then it starts getting bigger. But yeah, going back to your comment about the terrace house, it's just a case of taking on signing someone as a principal contractor, and then just making sure that they're giving you the right documentation. It's a checkbox exercise, really.
So, what in terms of projects where you've seen people, maybe not do this right, or things have gone wrong? Have you got any examples of what can happen and how it could affect somebody?
Yeah, I mean, if you go on the HSE website, they're always kind of publishing different cases, and you get a lot of the things that tend to catch people out. Obviously, falls from height are a big thing. One of the biggest risks.
That's why I mentioned taking the roof off a terraced house.
Taking a roof off. Yeah. I always say when I'm talking to people about this stuff, I always say about decorators. You could have a decorator in there working alone. If you haven't got the right risk assessments and stuff in place, he could fall off, break his neck.
So is it not a good idea to take a ladder and kind of lay it from across a banister and kind of another ladder off the ladder to get up to that?
Not ideally.
High spot. The high spot I'm talking about. That?
The really inaccessible bit. Yeah.
So ladder on a ladder, not a good idea.
It's not ideal.
Oh, okay.
Not ideal. But but yeah, it's just a case, as I keep saying, it's just a case of having those having the paperwork in place.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of protecting yourself as the client, as the investor. You obviously want to be protected yourself. You want to be able to protect any other investors that you've got involved in the project with you. And obviously you want to be protecting the guys who are working on site.
So for people that want to do this correctly and make sure that's protected, if you're doing a refurb or something, or works to your own home, not a problem. As soon as you become a buy-to-let landlord, buy-to-let investor, you're basically deemed a contractor, and you need, if you hire trades, if you hire more than 2 trades, you have to have a principal contractor appointed.
Yeah.
What if you just hired a main contractor to just do the work for you, and they hired their own plumber, electrician, etc.?
Yeah.
Well,
that is typically, that's ideally the way you want to go.
The way you want to go.
A lot of people obviously will manage their own subbies.
Yeah.
I always say my opinion of that is it can be a lot more, although it might feel like it's a cheaper way of doing it.
Yeah.
When you actually look at the bigger picture, sometimes that's not the case, because it could be it's just a lot simpler and more cost effective from a time point of view to have a contractor. They'll hire all the subbies, and then they take all the responsibility. You've only got one set of paperwork, one set of risk assessments, one set of contracts.
And when you hire that contractor to deliver it, how do you know the contractor, or what tips would you give people on making sure that contractor knows what they're doing?
Yeah, so I've got three main kind of what I call the killer questions at the beginning. I always ask contractors, will they work to CDM regs? Now, obviously, if they say no, or they don't know what CDM regs are, that's a little bit of a red flag. Having said that, I've had it in the past where they just may not, they understand about health and safety, they know what they've got to do, but they might not just have the paperwork in place, so you could work with them on that. So that's one question. If we start talking about health and safety and they kick up a big fuss, then to me, that's probably time to walk away. Then I always ask, will they work to contracts? Again, some say, well, I never have, but if they're open to it, that's great. Again, if they say, no, definitely not, then again, that's a red flag, because there must be a reason why they don't want to. And then the third thing for me is references. So, finding out, looking at what the jobs they're doing at the moment. I like to go and visit them to make sure they're working safely. I then like to speak to clients on jobs that they've just finished. Ideally have a look at them that are nearing completion, just to see the quality of the work. And then an absolute ideal scenario is then to speak to a client that they finished a year ago. Right. Because then you can find out whether they, if there were any remedial works that needed going back, whether they were reactive.
Well, this is very much for people as well, just to get some clarity on. If you're doing it on your own home, you don't need to. If it's a buy-to-let and you're doing a buy, refurbish, rent, refinance, where you're doing the plumbing, the electrics, the painting and decorating, new carpets, a full refurb.
Yep.
But if it's just somebody that's got a buy-to-let, it's rented out, the income's coming in, and they decide to get a plumber in to change a few radiators, that's okay?
Yeah,
because it's one plumber. It's just the one. So once you go to the 2, it starts to become a project.
Yeah. I mean, technically speaking, even if they're getting one in, that plumber should be working to.
Yeah, working safely, but they're not.
But as long as, you don't need to go through the
just because there's one, it doesn't allow them to be unsafe.
Correct.
But they don't need to go through the process of CDM.
Yeah.
Okay, so you help people out on projects. I've actually hired Darren. The reason I want to bring him in, I've hired him to do all of this stuff on a project we're working on the moment. We're turning a commercial building into 21 apartments. I can tell you he knows his stuff. So there's a lot of things in that project that have come up with like bats and archaeological surveys and ecology and so on. But that's really the more difficult and bigger a project you typically come across, really.
Yeah. And to be fair, a lot of that stuff is more on the kind of planning. You know, where I get involved a lot of the time is the actual pre-construction, where we're talking about setting the project up. Whereas obviously on the cinema project, there's more stuff going on.
More stuff going on, quite a bit of stuff going on. So for anyone who's thinking, I'm about to do a refurb, I'm about to go in and hire contractors to do this refurb project. It's got a bit of everything. You know, rip out, painting, decorating, plastering, new kitchen, new bathroom. Where should they go, or where do they go as a first step to get information on how to keep themselves safe?
Okay, so there's an app called CDM Wizard, which is great. It basically, you can go onto that. It's designed for the main contractor, really, but quite often I go on and I fill it out for them. So yeah, if you go onto the CITB website, there's something called the CDM Wizard. And it basically, the contractor can enter all of the details about the project, the work they're doing, or the different subcontractors are doing, and it will basically spit out a risk assessment and method statement. It's a very simple document, but in most cases, certainly on the smaller projects, that's all you need. And then that will give you, or the client, what you need to kind of protect yourself. So if something goes wrong on site, HSE come and do an investigation, you can say, well, you know, this is some of the paperwork I've got in place.
Right. You JV on projects and stuff with people now as well, where you bring that skill set to the project?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so I'm always looking to JV with other investors in the community. So yeah, if someone's got a project that they find it, you know, they've sourced the deal, and they just want a little bit of help or assistance, or they're out of their depth, or whatever it may be, don't have the time to deal with it, then I'll come in and work with them on that. And then I will take over the process of finding the builders, going out to doing the tendering process. So
somebody else finds the project, goes, okay, I've got the project, I've negotiated the project, but I've no idea how to deliver this project, or I could deliver it, but I don't have the time.
Yeah.
So you'd step in and basically do all of the picking of the contractors, making sure they're doing it all to the right regs.
Correct.
And deliver that project through.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, I've been in the community for a little while now, and I've got other investors that are, kind of know what I do and kind of trust that I know how to deliver a project as well. So I just think if you're doing things properly, it just makes you more investable to private finance investors.
So what type of projects do you work on?
Anything. Well, I say anything. It's obviously got to be a project large enough to kind of warrant me getting involved in my fees, etc. But yeah, typically anything from large refurbs through to HMO conversions up to bigger commercial conversions.
So large refurbs are singlets, HMOs, big commercial conversions, mix of everything.
Yeah.
For anyone who I guess is listening to this and thinking they were interested in getting started in property, building a property portfolio, and they hear the word CDM, and they panic and go, "Oh my God, I didn't know how to do that stuff." It is quite simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything. It's simple if you understand the steps of the process.
So I guess like actually finding a property. When you came here in 2018 originally, sourcing a buy-to-let property and looking for buy-to-let property and doing creative stuff like tenant buyers and so on, you didn't know what you didn't know.
No, exactly.
And then it's just a learned skill.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to find out more about CDM, reach out to you, see how it all works, how can they get in touch?
So I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the usual platforms. My website is www.taurus-property.com.
Taurus as in the bull.
Taurus as in the bull.
The bull, Taurus.
Yeah, Taurus-property.com.
How did you come up with that name?
It's my star sign, funnily enough.
Of course.
Simple as.
I've known him for 6 years and I never asked that question. It's his star sign.
Never get a birthday card.
Taurus never gets a birthday. Now I know his birthday is Taurus-property.com.
Correct.
So you've been watching Darren Burrows from Taurus Property, sharing all things health and safety and CDM regulations, and keeping it simple. If you enjoyed this episode and want to know more about not just how to get success in property, but how to protect yourself as well on those refurb projects and on your finance and developments, everything relating to property, then make sure you don't miss future episodes. Hit that notification bell. I've been Kevin McDonald. Darren has been Darren Burrows. You've been amazing as always. I'll see you next time.